Hey DGS Northfield families, Kartal here. Wanted to take a moment to explain a little bit more about what in-person learning and then the 100% fully virtual learning might look like once the district begins the return to school. Before delving into that, want to state that I'm a DPS parent too, and I'm getting these emails and text messages about choosing our options, and it's difficult because we don't know what everything looks like. And one of the challenges is that there are still guardrails that we haven't learned about, some district expectations and systems that haven't fully been rolled out to us. So we don't 100% know if we are going to be doing the full in-person return or if it's going to be hybrid. We think we know, but everything we're going to be sharing right here just should be taken with a grain of salt. It still is malleable. Our teachers need to weigh in, but we want to give families as much information as we can so that you can make the best choice for your son or daughter. I think the second thing that we want to state is that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and people's health and well-being is at the forefront of every decision that a family is making, and we just 100% respect a family. I want to support them if they choose the virtual option or if they choose the in-person option. Of course, it's going to be difficult to run two different schools at the same time. We've never done that before. No one has, but we're just going to do the best job we can. All right, let's talk a little bit about what in-person return might look like, and then we'll get to the virtual option. First thing is, our expectation is going to be that middle school students will be able to return to school on Wednesday, October 21st, after that short fall break. That's going to give teachers some time to plan some of the lessons, some of the units. We expect it to be that full day. 8:30 to 3:30 is what we think may happen, but again, that could change. Students are going to be learning in cohorts. So there's going to be a group of students that are going to stay together, and that's so that if a student does contract the COVID virus, that they don't have to quarantine based on just someone who is in their Spanish class or just someone who is in their math class. They'll have all of their classes together, and that will create fewer cohorting requirements should someone have a positive test case. These class sizes will be about 29 students, which is our class average. And the way that we're trending right now is that the 100% virtual students would be mixed into these groups as well. And so what that would mean is that in a class of 29 students, the way the current numbers are looking, about 4 or 5 of those students would be 100% virtual. And they would be watching some of that instruction via a web camera, maybe a Chromebook that is used by a student to get a little bit closer to the action. Students are going to have 4 classes a day, and likely they would also have like a study hall type time as well. So it wouldn't be so dissimilar from our schedule. It would be longer classes, so they would have about like an hour and a half for math, for literacy, for science or social studies, whether it's A week or B week, or for their elective or Spanish, again, A week or B week. And that's similar to what students have had thus far. We wouldn't be able to do our normal individualized learning time that we did last year, where students are grouped based on their need or ability level, because students can't change cohorts, but we would use that time to support students where they're at. Families would download an app, and they would do a little screening of students each morning, temperature, check for symptoms before coming to school. But we would do a temperature check as well when students arrive. We would expect for it to be kind of a rolling arrival, so we don't have students that bunch up at the doors. So they would just walk right into their first period class, get their temperature checked. If a student did exhibit symptoms, they would go into an auxiliary health room, where we would then contact parents and have them picked up. Students would wear masks the entire day. Adults would wear masks as well. And what that does is that allows for us to be in closer proximity than maybe we would without a mask. And the distances, all students would be over 3 feet apart during the learning day. Staff members would have to be 6 feet apart. One thing to be aware of for the return to school option is that there is not transportation provided for middle school students. The exception is if it is named in a student's individualized education plan that they require transportation. For most of our students that are mild, moderate students that have their learning occur mostly in the general classroom, that's not generally an identification within their individualized education plan, just to let families know that. So the vast majority of our families would not have district provided transportation. We realize that for families, many of whom they rely on that. And so what we would hope to do is to coordinate families perhaps within the same cohort or families that are already spending some time together to help arrange for carpooling, because we know that that is a need. But certainly one of the things that families should be considering for the in-person return is how are you going to be dropping your student off and picking up your student. A couple other things to say is that if there is a positive test, then students, we don't know how long the quarantine period was. Originally, the district had identified 14 days where students wouldn't come into learning. That would certainly be the maximum of what it would be, where those students would then move to virtual. But it could be a little bit less than that. We're still waiting for some of those guidelines. I mean, we're still waiting to know if we can do the full 5-day in person, which we believe will be the case. But we know that high schools are preferring to do hybrid so they can get to all of their classes where students have that AABB schedule. But we think what's going to happen is that students beginning October 21st will be able to come to school 5 days a week for the full day. The exception, of course, is our half-day Fridays. We would have our regular half-day Friday schedule, which ends at 12:20. I want to talk a little bit about the virtual option. One part about this has already been explained, and that's that students would be mixed in with in-person learning as well. And that's just the likely result of, that's the likely ending place that we'll have. We still need to talk with our teachers about it. I think the rationale is that from a teacher perspective, planning for an in-person lesson and planning for a virtual lesson, they're really two very different things. Sitting in front of the computer and making slides that you're pushing out is totally different than walking around the classroom. And creating two different systems for your class really doubles what we're asking teachers to do. I don't even think they would be able to do it. So they'll be mixed in person, which has lots of benefits as well. They get a chance to know their classmates. They get a chance to feel like they're in school, have some of that live instruction at the board, the way that we think that learning is often presented. And teachers will still be doing some chats with the students. Most work that students are going to do is going to be posted online, and that's honestly how middle school was running even before the pandemic started. Students would walk into class, open up Google Classroom, find some of their assignments, and submit that. So that part really wouldn't change. I do think that one thing that families should know who do select the 100% virtual option is that there are some things that just won't translate well to the virtual world. And I think the worst thing that we could do as a school right now is to lie and to say everything's going to be just as great as some of the virtual instruction we have right now. When we do in-person return, I think that we might have a science lab. We can't drop off Bunsen burners at someone's house and have them lighting magnesium on fire. So what do the students do during that time? I think one idea is that teachers are building kind of a bunch of tools, a bunch of resources that students, they can engage in some work if they can't do that same in-person lesson in that moment. But there's going to be some things that are going to be lost. And I just want to name that. We're going to do the best we can to connect with students, to connect with families. But we can't transfer everything from the in-person experience to the virtual experience. If you want to reach out and have more questions, feel free to email me, Mr. Jaquette. I'll be happy to answer. We're not going to bound families that you said on September 17th that you were going to do in-person or virtual, and that's the only thing you can do all year. If you change your mind based on your situations, we're going to respect that. We're not going to leave anyone out. We're not going to force anyone to come to school, but it does help us for planning if we know what your plan is. Hopefully this information helps you. I think I want to speak just more generally right now. I think that this school is going to do a great job with our in-person return. I think that some of the things that are going to help us for in-person is that we have, compared to other schools, fewer teachers that are on accommodations. The vast majority of our teachers are coming back to school and are going to be presenting live instruction. We also are a pretty nimble school, a small school. We're a joyous school, and we're not going to be overly burdened and anxious by some of these health guardrails. We're going to follow them, but then we're gonna have fun and we're gonna learn. And I think that those things in tandem, along with some of the great teachers that we have, are gonna help us do a really great job with our in-person return to school. Frankly, I'm excited about it, speaking personally. I can't wait to meet all of our new students and see our returning students. I wanna give you guys a big hug, but I can't because of social distancing, but I want to. And then for our 100% virtual students, we're gonna do a really great job. We're gonna try to support you guys as best we can. It's not going to be the caliber that it's at right now. For example, if we were just running a virtual school, we wouldn't choose 8:30 to 3:30. That's a long time for virtual instruction. That's gonna be exactly what we do when we return to school because we have to run 2 schools simultaneously. So we're gonna do the best job we can, but just be prepared for us to have to make some sacrifices as we bring in the majority of our students for in-person. I hope this helps, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.